Welcome to the No Sugarcoating Podcast. I am Amber Romaniuk, emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert. I am also the founder of amberapproved.ca. I support professional women achieve optimal health through mindful eating, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. This podcast provides the honest truth on what you really need to create body freedom. The No Sugarcoating Podcast provides information on healthy living, lifestyle changes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. Always seek the advice of your healthcare practitioner regarding your health and nutrition program. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 222 of the podcast. 222. I cannot believe that I'm even saying that. It's so amazing to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope your day is going well. This week on the podcast, this week's podcast has really been inspired by all of the women who have reached out to me regarding whether they're asking questions or they're booking a complimentary consultation, and we're having a conversation there, or they're signing up as clients. I have had like dozens, if not hundreds of women reach out to me who have tried keto and failed in many different ways. And so today I really wanted to share three particular stories of three women's stories of keto failure and you know, the work that we did together as they sought me out for my support and the negative impacts that doing keto had on their bodies physically, mentally, and emotionally. I think it's just so important to share that. And I'm just sharing kind of specific scenarios. I'm not going to mention names or anything to keep things confidential, but this is just so important to share because I know so many of you are thinking about trying keto, have tried it, or are fighting back and forth with failing with it and then, you know, emotionally eating. So I really wanted to address that today. And the other two key points are how keto fueled overeating and food fears and why keto won't help you build self-love. So really excited for today's episode. And of course, as always, whilst I personally don't believe in keto or any kind of restrictive eating style, I fully respect what other people choose to do. And if it's something that works for you, great. I want you to celebrate that. But for the majority of the people who I talk to or who I'm connecting with, it is not working for them. And I really want to be a voice for them. However, you may still learn some things, even if you are on a different path with this. So just a couple key announcements that I want to mention before I dive in today. The show notes for today's episode can be found at amberapproved.ca/podcast/222. Be sure to subscribe to the No Sugarcoating Podcast on all podcast apps. You can also click through in the show notes to listen. And of course, listen on any app that you may have on your phone for podcasts. So I mentioned it last week and I'm going to plant a seed again this week. Have you feel like you're failing with your New Year's health resolutions? Maybe you failed with keto. Maybe you failed with Whole30. Maybe you're failing with your diet and exercise goals and your weight loss goals. And it's just really starting to frustrate you and get you down. You know, I find sometimes when we set really big goals and the hype goes away, we can feel frustrated and lost dealing with our struggles. Maybe the emotional eating picks back up. You know, maybe you're bloated and you're tired and you're just thinking, why don't these symptoms seem to want to go away? But honestly, let's face it, when we've been dealing with, you know, certain health symptoms and self-sabotaging behaviors like emotional eating for a long time, it's going to take more than a few days, weeks, or months to make these changes. So when you try the exact same quick fixes over and over, you're likely to keep getting the same results, which can drive a person crazy and honestly just be really exhausting. So if you are ready to take a different approach, if you are thinking, I know what I need to do, it's just that I'm not doing it, that's a great reason to reach out for support, because I often find we can have nutrition knowledge, but this goes way deeper than nutrition when we're dealing with our relationship with food, you know, body image insecurities, and physical symptoms like hormone and digestive imbalances. So I am having a beautiful February coaching sale to celebrate the month of self-love. So if you are interested in learning more on saving on my 6-month and 1-year coaching programs, you can email me at info@amberapproved.ca with the subject line February coaching sale, or you can go to rate@amberapproved.ca and just click schedule a consultation, fill out the intake form, select the time that you want to book in for the call, and then it will be all done and taken care of. I will put a link in the show notes to click right through to the schedule a consultation page. So again, Great savings on 1 year and 6-month programs. Really, really look forward to reaching out to all of you. It's always super cool because I get to connect with women all over the world. And I'm just so grateful and thankful that you guys have chosen my podcast and that you're choosing to reach out to me. Truly, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to just even talk to you about where you're at with your health goals and your struggles. And make sure you stay tuned to the end of the show notes just for a couple of other key announcements, including just an update on the spa giveaway. So if you're finding a specific eating style isn't working for you, or you're struggling with emotional eating, food addiction, digestive issues, inflammation, perhaps you suspect your hormones are off, self-care continues to be a struggle, you continue to be at the bottom of your priority list, fighting with your weight in your body, well, you're in the right place, my friends. Welcome to all of my new listeners, all my listeners I've had for a short time or a long time, as I'm going to continue to dive into the habits and mindsets to set you on a different path. Amber Approved offers private coaching for hormonal imbalances, weight loss and digestive issues, emotional eating, and more. Contact Amber at amberapproved.ca to book your 30-minute complimentary consultation today. So, sharing these 3 women's stories of keto failure, and what they all had in common was the reason the person chose to do this diet. So the underlying reason was about weight. They had read and had, some friends and colleagues told them, oh yeah, I read that keto is really good for weight loss. And oh, I did keto and I lost weight really fast. You should try it. And when we're in this state of vulnerability, when we've tried so many other diets or eating styles or, workout plans or meal plans and nothing is working, we just think, oh, I haven't found the thing that works yet. So maybe this will be the thing that works for me. We really, we can almost get desperate and this fear and panic and worry about losing control with your weight or with food or your body or further loss of control. It can just make you think, well, maybe I do have to do something really extreme and really restrictive to make this happen and to lose the weight, because nothing else really seems to work. When it's really that, continuing to be in diet behavior and restrict and, do something extreme, that's one of the things that's keeping you stuck in this vicious cycle in the first place. And I talk about that a lot and I emphasize it a lot because it's so true. And 85% of the North America population that is dieting fail on the diet and it doesn't stick. That's a significant stat. And if over, 90% of the female population in North America struggles with some form of, body image issues, or emotional relationship with food, disordered eating, whatever you want to call it, that is significant. That is not minor. That is huge. And the costs and impacts that, these unhealthy relationships with food are having on people are significant. It impacts their health. It impacts their emotional health. It impacts their relationships with their families, their kids, their spouses. It impacts their work, their career, obviously their own quality of life and lack thereof, because they're holding themselves back because they're not happy with their bodies. I think we really need to, and I, pride myself on taking a stand to ditch diets and to ditch restriction, because it doesn't work and it doesn't help us build a, amazing quality of life or healthy relationship with food. So, but I just wanted to kind of highlight that the underlying reason or the motivator was weight loss, and the emotions really behind that were dislike of body, frustration with body weight, fear of losing control with weight and with food. So some people think, oh, I'm going to go on this diet and then I'll, follow this and it'll curb my cravings. And if I just stick to these foods, I won't lose control and eat anything else. When again, anything that is restrictive will have an impact on our relationship with food and our mindset. So I will talk more about that specifically in point 2 on how keto fueled overeating and food fears. Okay, so the first scenario. So like I said, they all have kind of the same purpose of reaching out to me as they're, failed with keto and they noticed they had so many different health issues still existing or getting worse. And for this first scenario, and I want you to check in with yourself and see if you fit into one of these experiences, or if any of, this resonates with you, because I think I have a feeling for a lot of you that it will resonate. So the first scenario is this woman does keto and, reaches out, and now she has a more sluggish metabolism and hormone imbalances are worse, and symptoms from hormone imbalances are worse. So with any kind of restrictive dieting, anything, no matter what it is, but especially with keto, I think keto is dangerous. Personally, it's very restrictive. You're really, extremely restricting your carbs. And this can have a significant impact on your hormones, especially if you don't know what your current state of hormone health is. And I've talked about in other, keto related podcasts of how it could impact your heart health. And I've just witnessed and seen some different information where, people have talked about doing keto and then all of a sudden their increased risk for heart disease, like that, stuff like that is just kind of scary. And I know, yes, it's like, you just have to do it right. But how many people can quote unquote do it right and follow through and stick with it and be okay with it? Probably a very small amount of people. But anyways, going back to the hormones. So the problem is when you are already struggling with some form of symptoms, but you haven't actually had the symptoms addressed and assessed by an expert or a professional in this realm of like nutrition, digestion, hormones, mindset, metabolism, relationship with food, it's very difficult to actually understand and get to the root of your health symptom struggle. So like, what's causing your hormone imbalances? Why is your cortisol high? Why do you have adrenal fatigue? Why is your thyroid underactive? Why did you get Hashimoto's, right? Like, why did that happen to you? Because it's not just like, oh, well, poor me, I had bad luck and now I have these hormone imbalances. No, like we create them. It's not just bad luck. I don't believe it's just genetic. I really believe, between a mixture of things like the relationship you have with food, with your body, your schedule, and it being overbooked, your diet history, your hormone health, digestive health, inflammation, lymphatic health, stress levels, like thoughts you're thinking, it's all related and it's all connected. So, I think it's so important that before you do anything like this, that you go, what? Is this going to really resolve my issues? Like, yes, I'm going to this web page where it's talking about keto and it's promising that it's going to help heal my leaky gut, or it's going to, help me balance my digestion. It's going to take my cravings away. It's going to help with weight loss. And it's like, it's great that, these claims can be there, but until you understand your current state of health, which is where your hormones are at, do you have specific imbalances? If so, where are your numbers at? What kind of symptoms are you having? What is the severity of your symptoms? And even feel free to pull out a piece of paper and answer these questions for yourself. And if you have no idea about any of this, like this is a great potential reason to reach out. I address these things with my clients all the time, because the more thorough we get, the more we can understand your body, the more specific the recommendations can be for you. And that's what really helps you, gain the balance and the optimal health, rather than guessing like, well, I think I have some of these symptoms and I like the things that this program promises, so I'm just going to do this, but you really don't know. I think that's a huge kind of hole in health and wellness, is we're too quick to just jump on the bandwagons of things without first understanding, well, no, like what is at the root cause of my hormone issues, or what is at the root cause of my metabolism issues, or what is at the root cause for as to why I can't lose weight? Because usually there's multiple answers for any and all of those things. So this particular woman who came to me was really complaining of really bad fatigue, low energy. If she slept well, she'd wake feeling really tired. Otherwise, she would have troubles falling asleep and then waking up in the night. She was feeling really puffy, water retention, especially like her rings fitting tighter on her fingers, abdominal weight gain, cravings for sugar and salt, low mood, brain fog, poor memory. Her cycle was off, so it'd be either really light or it would disappear for a few months. So for me, even just when I hear those things and when she started to share that with me, I was just already thinking, I'm suspecting there may be a hormone imbalance going on, especially with cortisol. And then when we took further actions and, she had gone to her doctor and gotten some blood work done and we had sat down together and talked about her symptoms and her assessment, because I do a very thorough health assessment with specific tools that I have. And then, when we were looking at the blood work, I can't diagnose, but what I can do is take into account the symptoms and then what I see from the information there. And of course, any information that any other, person you're working with, it's great to put it all together. It was very apparent that there was a significant cortisol imbalance, and the cortisol was far too high. And those are common symptoms that people will often experience if it is too high. So, understanding that when you have hormone imbalances like cortisol being too high or too low, and it's largely called adrenal fatigue if it's too high and adrenal burnout if it's too low, is that we need to eat healthy carbs to help our cortisol levels regulate. Cortisol is our fight or flight stress hormone. And if we're overproducing it or we're underproducing it, it means the body is in a heightened state of stress. And your endocrine system, which is your hormones, your adrenal glands, which produce your cortisol, are very stressed out. And this puts you into, again, a state of fight or flight. You're not in rest and digest mode. So what happens is when you all of a sudden extremely restrict your carbohydrates, which help to give you energy and take less energy to break down, and you largely focus on protein and fat as your main sources of fuel, well, let me tell you, protein and fat take a lot longer to digest and break down, which means it takes more energy to digest and break them down. And I love protein and fat, but I also really love healthy carbs and that combination. So if we have to spend more energy breaking down more protein and fat because we've restricted our carbs and we're now relying on those as our energy and fuel sources, guess what? We then have less energy to focus on balancing your hormones, getting your adrenal glands, settled down, having the cortisol levels come down. So this is something that I've seen time and time again, women going low carb or keto, and then I see cortisol levels through the roof. And what's so interesting is, oh man, what would that have been now? 8 or 9 years ago, I cut out fruit. I didn't do keto. It wasn't even a thing yet, but I just cut out fruit for a little while because I read in order to fully heal leaky gut, and this was before I fully had my own education. But I read that, it would really help heal leaky gut, and I was still getting some bloating. So I cut out all fruit, but I still had lots of beets and peas and sweet potatoes and yams and starchy carbohydrates. And whilst my blood sugar was balanced and it did help my digestion, I was getting more and more tired. I was eating chicken breasts and cauliflower for breakfast, or tuna and vegetables or eggs, omelets, things like that. And I noticed I'd wake up tired and then I'd eat my breakfast and I'd feel so exhausted. And I was still trying to work out a few days a week. And my cortisol was again 7-8 times higher than it was supposed to be. But what was so fascinating is cutting out the fruit and, having a lower carb intake, and it was innocent for me, was making my cortisol levels worse. And then my thyroid went underactive and I started to gain weight, and then I felt more puffy, and then my estrogen levels went up. So not knowing the exact root causes for why I was still having issues with, the gut stuff and why my energy was low and why my cortisol was staying high, not identifying those and just assuming, oh yeah, I just need to cut out fruit and that's going to help me heal my leaky gut. Whilst it was a good learning for me because then I got more educated and now I'm able to help my clients more. So I understand why I went through the experience. But for everybody, who's not making this an expertise and this isn't your profession, it's so important that we just don't assume by reading one thing that that's what we need to do, because that book or that blog or that influencer, whoever that is, doesn't know your current state of health and doesn't know uniquely what you need. Therefore, those kind of vague recommendations, they just rarely ever work for anybody long term, or they can by accidentally make symptoms worse. And it's innocent. But again, when we're just reading and looking and thinking, oh, well, that sounds promising, we assume, and because we really want to feel better, we'll do anything at that point. But I think instead of just jumping to things, and then it took me a few years to really balance my hormones after that, because it did take quite the toll. Not to mention how hard on the kidneys high protein, high fat can be. So I think it's just so important to understand that, because then what ended up happening for her is because her cortisol was high and she was so tired and puffy and she was, keeping the abdominal weight gain on, is it was really frustrating her because she's like, I'm trying to do these good things, but I'm so tired. My symptoms are getting worse. After I finished, after I quit keto, my symptoms just were worse than when I started. But again, it's because there were these underlying hormone imbalances that were not addressed properly. And no extreme eating style is going to help to balance that out. There was also, other aspects like lack of self-care and overbooked schedules and emotional eating that had to be dealt with, because it was really the emotional eating that was fueling the hormone and digestive imbalances. And then of course, the bouncing from the emotional eating to the restriction. So then of course, when that happens and when, we end up with things like high cortisol and or your thyroid goes sluggish, this has a significant impact on your metabolism, and it often will slow the metabolism down. And then you may find yourself feeling more puffy, bloated, gaining more weight. For some people, it's the abdominal. Some people, it's the insides of the legs, the face, the arms. So I think it's instead of seeing the weight gain as a problem, an issue, an inconvenience, and embarrassment, it's like your body is trying to communicate with you. And one of the most common ways she can do that is by making you gain weight or hang on to water retention. So she's just trying to get your attention. So if you can try to see any, weight gain or retention with more loving, compassionate eyes, and then go, what, my body's trying to talk to me. Maybe I should take some action steps or get some help to try to deal with this. Like, that's what I encourage. The more understanding we can be to our bodies, the less we're going to stress our bodies out. But the more negative we are and the more we're fighting and putting our bodies down and calling them names, like, that's just going to make her want to hang on to more protection, because it's like you versus yourself. You are fighting with your body, and your body just recognizes that as a stress threat. So what's so great though about this is once she completely finished restricting and we, slowly added in really healthy carbs again and addressed the hormones and got her on some really great, hormone supports that were all natural, foods, teas, and spices, and a couple of really great supplements. And, she started to get into a more relaxing self-care routine, and she's sleeping better. And of course, one of the big other pieces was addressing that relationship with food. The cortisol regulated, right? The energy improved, the water retention went away, the mental clarity came back, the mood improved, the cycle improved, the abdominal weight gain went away. So it was just really cool to see the shifting and the positive changes that happened when she undid the old diet conditioning and ditched the restriction with the keto. So that was a really, really powerful experience. Another scenario here, number 2 scenario, is another client who was doing keto in hopes to help digestion, but the digestion was getting worse because of the back and forth between like high stress, feeling the need to be perfect with the keto eating, and then having stress and overwhelm with restriction, fueling binge eating. So hopping back and forth between restrictive keto and extreme binge eating, right? These are extremes. And so when you're going from this place where you're like trying to diet to support your health, but then you have an unhealthy relationship with food, it really fuels just like, the bloating, the gas, irregular bowel movements, diarrhea, constipation, feeling like no matter what you eat, you get more and more sensitive to more foods, even if they're quote unquote healthier, clean foods. And this can make you feel really frustrated and embarrassed, and you may isolate, and you may not go out and be social. You may not be able to fit into certain clothes because the way your lower abdominal bloats out, and it really is uncomfortable. And I know what that feels like. And the symptoms continuing to get worse can frustrate us. And there's this mentality, and I used to struggle with this, when my digestion was really bad, because I've talked about the 9-day, 10-day bloat I used to get. And some days it would just happen out of the blue, and then I'd be like, well, screw it. I'm already bloated. I might as well just eat whatever I want because it's already there. And so I find certain symptoms can fuel that I don't care mentality. And then you end up, self-sabotaging with food or binging, and then you feel even worse. And then you panic and go, oh my God, I messed up. Now I need to get back on this keto. But the stress of overeating, not chewing your food properly, eating a lot of refined foods, whether it's fast food, deep fried food, lots of sugar, wheat, dairy, corn, your food sensitivities, right? And you're eating it in larger quantities, and then, feeling guilty and angry, frustrated, sad about what you're eating. It puts a lot of stress on the digestive system, low stomach acid, and then you have acid reflux and heartburn, and then you're not chewing your food properly, and so too large of particles are going into the small intestine. You're not absorbing your nutrients properly, so that's depleting your minerals and vitamins in your body, and that impacts hormones and digestion. Your liver is overburdened because you're all of a sudden, binge drank, or you ate a lot of sugar, fat, and unhealthy or, really refined foods. And then your pancreas is overtaxed because it's having to produce so many enzymes to help break down your food. And then because the food is in too large of particles, the impact that it has on your small intestine is it's hitting the small intestine and it's agitating the lining. And then that creates that inflammation, which is that bloating, warmth, pain, those cramps or that burny, achy feeling. Those are all signs of inflammation and digestive discomfort. So when we're going back and forth between an eating style that is restrictive, and then, we can't keep up with it, and then we go back the other way and we overeat and binge, emotionally eat, whatever you want to call it, it is a massive stressor on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. And then what happens the more you do that, your digestion gets more sensitive and normally gets worse just because you are continuing to fuel what is already a very stressed out body and a very stressed out digestive system. So again, what I love about this scenario for this woman who reached out is once we were able to get her to focus on understanding what was triggering her to binge and emotionally eat, and she had the tools to address that, we were also able to, support the digestive system in healthy ways and add in more healthy variety of foods rather than restrict. And, the more we got her away from restriction, the less emotional eating was happening, the more we could see the positive impact with the digestive symptoms going away. So the bloating disappearing. I had one person who was doing this and she had a ton of food sensitivities. And as she improved her relationship with food, they all went away. I've had other people who, their doctors want to put them on immunosuppressant drugs because their inflammation is so significant, but it's really, we need to get in and balance the digestion, but no restrictive diet. As long as you're battling back and forth with restriction and binging or emotionally eating, you will not get there because the stress is significant. So gaining freedom from the emotional eating, building the healthy relationship with food, being more compassionate toward your symptoms with your bloating or your digestive issues, and taking action to get to the roots as to why your digestion is so sensitive is so important. We also identified for her she had really significant candida, which is an imbalance of unhealthy bacteria in the large intestine, which can make you bloated and tired and brain fogged and craving sugar and gain weight and many other symptoms. And so addressing that too just really helped to calm her digestion down. So again, as you're hearing me talk, there's like multiple layers of this journey and multiple reasons why people are struggling with different symptoms. But if we take the time to actually go through a health journey and take the focus off of quick fix, do it fast and restrict, and actually identify and give your body time to balance, and give yourself time to build a healthy relationship with food, so much is possible. And this is where optimal health and freedom are possible. And that brings me to the third scenario, which is how keto fuels overeating and food fears. So all three scenarios kind of had this, but I found it to be quite significant with this one. So I had another client come forth and she said, I struggled with emotional eating before, but I never restricted carbs. And then I did keto. And of course, had to cut out, lots of different vegetables and all fruits. And now I am terrified to eat a carrot, or I'm terrified to eat a bell pepper or a strawberry. I fear that if I eat these foods, I will gain weight and lose control, because obviously to get the results with keto, you have to, restrict your carbs and really follow more of a rigid plan. And so what I found so fascinating was there started to be this trend of women coming to me with food fears, and I had not seen this before. But with this evolution of keto and the restrictive nature of it, all these women were starting to come to me sharing about their fears around fearing healthy carbs, which I think is honestly concerning and scary, because if we're to the point where we're having to restrict and we're fearing healthy foods coming from nature that are so good for us and so rich in nutrients and so supportive of our health in all aspects, we really need to start questioning, is this, eating style supportive and healthy for me if there's this risk of developing food fears that then fuel a more unhealthy relationship with food? For this person as well, it also made their binge eating worse. So they went from, just some overeating sometimes if they had a bad day with the keto, to full-blown binging through pints of ice cream and eating, half a box of cookies, or, lots of candy, or binging on jelly beans or a lot of fruit. So I think it's just so important to address this, because any eating style that fuels food fears or makes emotional eating worse, or actually has you develop an emotional relationship with food or an eating disorder, like that's of concern. And it's so important for you to get support with that. So it was so important for us to first I had to help her identify, her emotional eating triggers, and we had to start talking about and addressing which foods she was afraid of. And so first we just started to slowly add in one food at a time of the things she was least afraid of, to show her and build the food courage that it's safe for you to have this. You'll feel better. You'll have more energy. You're not going to gain weight. You're not going to lose control. And as we did that, she felt more satiated and satisfied. And as we did that again, because she's identifying her emotional eating triggers, she's starting to see that no diet's ever going to help her make peace with her body. But, unbooking her schedule and stopping with multitasking and eating and just being present with her food and chewing it properly is going to help. That if she adds in healthy carbs with her meals, with her protein and fat, she actually feels more satisfied and satiated, and her sugar cravings calmed down. Again, though, addressing though that there was a huge fight with her weight and her body was very important to identify. And when she started to realize there was a big lack of self-love and that the perfectionist mindset she had from keto was fueling her unhealthy relationship with food and the food fears, we were able to incorporate different tools and self-care and the coaching to help her really, build that foundation of self-care and catch negative self-talk, catch the body shaming when it was happening, and start to incorporate positive self-talk and different kinds of self-care that she could do to help her feel more confident and at peace with her body, which also calmed down the feeling of needing to restrict. So undoing, old diet mentalities, old things you learn, like, oh, you can't have carbs after 6 p.m., right? Like that's all just myth stuff to me. I don't believe in any of that. When we learn how to listen to our bodies, which is so important, and you learn to understand why you have the symptoms that you do, then you can take the action steps that, really resonate for you to overcome those symptoms and balance your health. Versus when you focus on a diet and a number on a scale, which are all so external, you really are distracting yourself from dealing with what are the inner, deeper pieces, the lack of self-worth, the lack of worthiness, not feeling happy in your body, the overbooked schedules, the insecurities, the low self-worth, whatever it is. So I think it's time that we stop distracting ourselves with diets and weight focuses, and that, we start to open up to going inside and doing the inner work. And if you have fears around losing control of food and your weight, then it's important to address those and to work through them so you can build confidence and ease and trust with your body, instead of staying stuck in that. And that brings me to my third point, which is why keto won't help you build self-love. So keto is not going to help you build self-love because, and this goes for any eating style or meal plan or calorie counting or any plan that just specifically only focuses on diet and or movement, it's not going to help you build self-love because it doesn't help you go inside and focus on that. It doesn't help you to look at your schedule and understand why is it so busy and overbooked and why are you not taking your lunch break. For some of my clients, like they're not even taking time to go to the bathroom, and we have to start somewhere. And of course we change that. But if you're not even going up to get water, you're not eating your snacks or your food, like we need to address those pieces because that's what's fueling the overeating. And then you hop on a restrictive diet to try and compensate. The scale is not going to help you love yourself. Obsessing about your weight's not going to help you love yourself. It's about addressing your mindset, your attitude, your emotions, then the thoughts and feelings you have about yourself. And if they're largely negative all the time, then we need to work on understanding what triggers you to think so negatively about yourself, and what's going on in your life that's making you feel so negative about yourself, and what small little changes do we start to make so that you can start to build confidence and start to feel better in your body. Doing keto is not going to help you stop comparing yourself to other people. It only is going to fuel it, because often then people get caught up in, oh, well, they're doing keto and they're doing so good and they've lost this much weight and I'm not, blah, 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 blah. And that can, again, make the obsession worse or make you be harder on yourself. So I think we need to understand that the keto is not going to help us, overcome our body image obsessions or weight obsessions or our negative self-sabotage with food. Your keto is not going to help you understand you have an ego or a self-sabotaging mindset that's blocking you from optimal health and body freedom, right? Keto doesn't help you with any of that. In fact, I think it often helps create more negative things for anyone I've come into contact with anyway, because it fuels the perfectionism or all or nothing mindset. It's like you're either all in with keto, and if you're not all in, well, then you must be failing and, messing up and eating foods you're not quote unquote supposed to have, which again fuels an unhealthy relationship with food. And I think, going back to the comparison, when we compare our success to others and we just assume we aren't strong enough or have the willpower to do it like they did, then you assume there's something wrong with you. And, you'll see people post success stories about keto or different diets or like their weight loss. And I'm all about celebrating. I'm not opposed to that at all. But the problem is when you compare yourself to that and you think there's something wrong with you because you're not getting the same results. While some people may have initial success that can happen quickly and rapidly, it probably isn't sustainable for most people, as per the stat of 85% of the people who go on a diet fail and gain the weight back and then some, right? So what if we saw the second part of the story, which was, I binged myself back to gaining the weight, and now I feel super crappy about it. Like, you don't see people sharing, what happens after the diet stops working or after they get triggered and they fall back into old habits, right? And that's the thing, is we can't just assume that just because everyone's posting their success story that, other things are not going on behind the scenes, or that they're like scared so deeply to eat a carrot for fear of gaining weight. Like, you just don't know. And for some people, they may have success, and that's great. But there's just such a majority of the population here who cannot. This is not sustainable. And then, you look at social media driving this, and social media can be great for connecting with people and communicating and creating a sense of community. But if you see people who are sharing, that they love themselves or they've had success on keto, but behind the scenes, they hate themselves, they're gaining the weight back, they're binging, we don't see the other side of that story potentially and how inauthentic it is. And we're just tied to the quick results we see because we're so conditioned for that. So, and I've even witnessed people who are actively promoting keto, if you knew what was going on behind the scenes for them. And some of these people are big influencers, people that you wouldn't think that there ever would be an issue, but their hormones are out of whack and they're constantly having more health issues, and they have an unhealthy relationship with food, and they're binging on carbs, right? I'm not here to sugarcoat things. I'm here to tell you the truth because I care and I love you all, and I want you to have the food and body freedom and to not even go near this stuff, because it just creates more issues for most people. So even those who've made money off promoting this, that are not fully following it, themselves, they've wrecked their metabolism or their hormones or their digestion. So I think it's so important to be open about your journey and to not tread into these extreme, potentially dangerous, eating styles, because it can really wreak a lot of havoc on the body, as per me sharing these 3 experiences today. I'm all about sharing the good and the bad, the ups and downs. We're human, and it's important to be authentic. Like, my health is in pretty good shape, but, I have my periods of time where all of a sudden my sleep, just goes wonky, and then I have to, tweak my hormones, or, a couple of weeks ago, I tried to eat regular strawberries and my body just only wants organic strawberries, and my stomach started to burn, and I'm like, okay, no, like my body doesn't want this. So like, I'm human. I have my things that I address as well. But the difference is I really am aware now, and I know how to listen to my body, but that took years of learning. So I hope this has helped for you today. I hope this has resonated with you. If you are struggling, you have food fears, you're resonating with the different symptoms or, things I'm talking about with the unhealthy relationship with food, get support, whether it's me or someone else. I just want you to gain the freedom. But if it's resonant, take advantage of the coaching sale, or email me and we can, go through and have a conversation, because this is truly about you gaining awareness and choosing something different rather than staying stuck in the rat race of, dieting and restriction and overeating and being frustrated with your weight. We need to stop that vicious cycle, because it does have a significant impact on your health and your life. And I want you to be free of that, so you can really enjoy your life and have optimal health. So the show notes for today's episode can be found at amberapproved.ca/podcast/222. If you have questions, feedback about the podcast topics you want to hear, email me at info@amberapproved.ca. Be sure to take the emotional eating quiz at amberapproved.ca as well. And as I've shared earlier, you still have a couple more episodes to enter the spa giveaway, which is worldwide. You can either enter by leaving a 5-star review on any podcast app and email me at info@amberapproved.ca with the name and country you left it under. You can also share the podcast on Instagram and tag me at Amber Romaniuk, Romaniuk, which is my name. And I will enter you in as well. But sharing about the podcast is another great way to enter. So I hope you have a great day and a great week. Remember, there's no better time than the present to take action on your health. So take action now. And I will look forward to sharing a whole new podcast episode with you guys next Sunday. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, review, and rate this podcast and share it with your friends. You can find me at amberapproved.ca and follow me on Instagram and YouTube at Amber Romaniuk. Join me next Sunday for another brand new episode and another step toward body freedom.